Welcome back, viewers. You are with me, Surbhi Unyal, and we are doing a special lecture series under the symbolic expressions. We have with us Ms. Manisha, who is going to interpret my lectures in sign language. And in this special lecture series, we are doing an introduction to philosophy. And within that, we are doing Indian philosophy. And in our previous lectures and in this present lecture as well, we will be discussing Sāṅkhya Philosophy. So in the previous lectures, we saw that how Sāṅkhya made a distinction between Purush and Prakriti, they being the two ultimate realities, but possessing very different attributes. In fact, they possess some of the very contradictory attributes. In fact, these two are considered to be in a contact for an evolution to take place. So when there has to be an evolution or a creation, both Purush and Prakriti have to come together, even though they possess some of the very different qualities. So, in our previous lecture, we discussed that how does evolution take place when there is a disturbance, or you can say a vibration which Rajas creates, and with this vibration, the Sattva and the Tamas, they also vibrate and in fact lead to a disturbance in the equilibrium. And this disturbance in the equilibrium then leads to evolution. But we also saw that Prakriti alone cannot be the cause of evolution, or Purush alone cannot be the cause of evolution. They both have to come together in order for the evolution to take place, or the creation to take place. And to describe this contact, Sāṅkhya Philosophy, they have given a very beautiful example of a lame man and a blind man, that how there has to be a partnership or cooperation between both of them to reach to a destination. So a blind man alone won't be able to reach to the destination. In fact, a lame man wouldn't be able to reach to the destination. But if they both come together, they will be efficiently reach to the destination, where the blind man or the lame man who sits on the shoulder of the blind man, he points out the way, and the blind man may walk, and thus both can reach to the destination, though neither of them could have done that separately. In the similar manner, this inactive Purush and the non-intelligent Prakriti, they also have to cooperate to serve the end. And this union, it disturbs the equilibrium of the gunas and lead to the evolution. Now the question that arises is, how does the contact between Purush and Prakriti takes place? Purush is reflected in the intellect, which is the buddhi, and wrongly identifies himself with his own reflection in the buddhi. It is this reflection of the Purush which comes into the contact with Prakriti, and not the Prakriti himself. So, if we are trying to understand this contact between Purush and Prakriti, it is said that the Purush, it is reflected in the intellect, which is the buddhi, and when it is reflected in the intellect, it wrongly identifies himself with his own reflection in the buddhi. And this reflection of the Purush, this comes into the contact with the Prakriti. So it's not the actual Purush which is coming into the contact with the Prakriti. In fact, it is the reflection of the Purush on the buddhi which comes in contact with the Prakriti. So this contact between Purush and Prakriti, which are considered to be absolute and independent entities, have faced many criticisms. Fine, so it has been highly criticized that how can these two entities, Purush and Prakriti, if they are independent, if they are absolute, how can they have a contact? And even when Sāṅkhya is trying to describe it by saying that, it's not the actual contact between the Purush and the Prakriti, it's just the reflection of the Prakriti onto the Buddhi, which creates a contact with the Prakriti. That kind of contact they are talking about. But even that has not gone uncriticized. Even that has been highly criticized, that it's not a very strong argument, and it's in fact a lame argument to say that it's just the reflection of the Buddhi and reflection of the Purush on the Buddhi, and not the Purush himself which is having a real contact with the Prakriti. But keeping that aside for now, we are not going deeper into the criticisms of this idea. Just try to understand that in order for evolution to take place, there has to be a contact between Purush and Prakriti. Only then an evolution can take place. And what kind or how is that contact taking place? This contact will happen only when Purush is reflected in the Buddhi or the intellect and wrongly identifies himself with his own reflection in the Buddhi. And it is this reflection of the Purush which is coming in contact with the Prakriti, and this is not the actual Prakriti, actual Purush himself that is coming in contact with the Prakriti. Now let us look at some of the evolutes of Prakriti. The first is Mahat. The first product of the evolution is called Mahat, the great. It is the germ of this vast world of objects, including intellect, ego, and the mind. It is cosmic in its nature, but it is a psychological aspect also, in which it is called Buddhi or intellect. So, Buddhi is distinguished from consciousness, where it is only the Purush alone which is the pure consciousness. So, Buddhi is not consciousness. So, in Indian philosophy and specifically in Sāṅkhya philosophy, there is a very clear-cut distinction between Buddhi, mind and consciousness, which we need to be very clear of. So, consciousness is, or the pure consciousness is just the Purush, while Buddhi, Manas or Mahat, they are all distinct from the consciousness. Purush alone is pure consciousness. An important function of Buddhi is to take decisions, which is a part of memory act. This helps to distinguish between the known and the knower. Sattva is predominantly found as an attribute of Buddhi. So, if you are asked what is the attribute of Buddhi, it is the Sattva which can be described as the attribute of Buddhi. And this Buddhi helps to identify the soul or the Atma, which differs from all the physical objects and their qualities. Fine. Now, this Mahat, it produces Ahankar. Ahankar is understood as ego in English. It is the second product of evolution. So, ego is identified as I or the mind feelings of an individual. Every individual has Buddhi. And since Ahankar is a practical element of Buddhi, it is found in all individuals. Because of ego, the Purush looks upon himself as an active agent, desire and strive for ends and possesses characteristics. So, there is this relationship between Mahat and the Ahankar, that this ahankar, you can say, is the practical element of the buddhi. And since it is a practical element of buddhi, it is found in all the individuals. And it is because of this ego or the ahankar that Purush, it looks upon himself as an active agent, or it desires or strives for the end. So an individual perceives an object through sense organs. Then the mind reflects on these perceptions and determines their nature. Following this attitude of mine or for me is attributed to these objects. This is nothing but regarded as ego. Fine. So when through this perception the mind reflects on these perceptions and tries to determine their nature, after having a perception and reflection on the perceptions, what it does is it generates this attitude of mine or something for me, and this, they are saying, is attributed to these objects which we consider to be mine or for me. And this happens precisely because of ego. So in this product, ahankar, you can say, all the three gunas of Prakriti operates. So ahankar is said to be of three kinds. The first one is of sattvic nature, when the sattva predominates, viewed as cosmic. It produces manas and 5 sensory organs and 5 motor organs. Viewed as psychological, it produces good deeds. So ahankar, in its sattvic nature, it is seen to produce manas, 5 sensory organs and 5 motor organs, and is seen to be producing good deeds. The second one, which is of the tamasic nature, here tamas predominates, or it is also known as bhutadi. It is viewed as cosmic. It produces 5 subtle elements which are known as tanmatras. Viewed as psychological, it leads to indifferent acts or to idleness and sloth, since it is tamasic in nature. So from the qualities of tamas, these are the psychological states that are developing in an individual because of tamas to be predominant here. The third is the tejas, where raj or rajas, when rajas predominates. Here it is viewed as cosmic. It supplies the energy by which the sattvic and the tamasa, it produce their respective evolutes. And viewed as psychological, it produces evil deeds. Fine, again being rajasic, that's what leads it to produce evil deeds. Moving further with manas. Manas or mind is neither eternal nor atomic as per Sāṅkhya. It is constituted with parts and thus can come into contact with different sense organs simultaneously. Mind helps to analyze and synthesize the sense data to determine perceptions. So this is the characteristic of mind, that it comes into contact with different sense organs and it helps to analyze and synthesize the sense data which we perceive. So it helps us in analyzing, synthesizing, or rationalizing those sense data which we are perceiving. Being an internal sense organ, it is aware of objects belonging to the past, the present, and the future. The other is Jnanendriyas. Gyanendriyas are known as 5 sense organs like nose, ears, eyes, skin and tongue. On Sāṅkhya's views, sense is an imperceptible energy or force which exists in the perceived organs and apprehends the object. It implies that sense is not the ears, but their power of hearing. Thus, the senses are not perceptible, but can infer. So, they are informed from the function that they perform. The 5 sense organs produce knowledge of touch, color, smell, heard and taste. All these are born because of Purush and they are the result of ego or ahankar. Moving further to Karmendriyas. Karmendriyas is understood as the 5 organs of action which resides in mouth, ears, feet, anus and the sex organs. They perform the functions respectively as speech, hearing, movement, excretion and reproduction. The cause of the creation of these organs is the desire of Purush for his experience, and that is the purpose of the Karmendriyas. Next is Tanmatras. These are 5 Tanmatras which are Shabd or sound, Sparsh or touch, Roop or form, Rasa or taste and Gandha or smell. All are very subtle because they are the elements of objects. Hence they can't be perceived but inferred. So we cannot perceive them, we can only infer them. The Sāṅkhya school viewed that the 5 elements, earth, water, air, fire and ether have their origin in the 5 Tanmatras. What are those 5 Tanmatras? Again I am repeating. The Shabd, which is the sound, the Sparsh, which is touch, Roop, which is form, Rasa, which is taste and Gandha, which is smell. So these 5 elements, they in fact you can say are related to these 5 earth, water, fire, air and ether. Coming now to Mahabhutas. There are 5 Mahabhuts found in the cosmos and those are air or Vayu, fire or Agni, Akash or ether, water or Jal, Prithvi or earth. Their respective qualities, as I had just mentioned earlier, were touch, color, sound, taste and smell. Now, evolution is the play of these 24 principles, all of them together, which we have mentioned in the whole process. All those, if you count them, there are 24 principles. Fine, so evolution is a play of these 24 principles, which together, along with Purush, who is a mere spectator and outside of the play of evolution, are the 25 categories of Sāṅkhya. So, along with the 24 principles, adding Purush to it becomes the 25 categories of Sāṅkhya, and that's where the whole play of evolution is taking place between these 25 elements, or you can say categories. So, out of the 25 principles, the Purush is neither a cause nor an effect. Prakriti is the only cause and not the effect. Mahat, Ahankar, and the 5 subtle essences are both causes and effects, while the 5 sensory and 5 motor organs and the 5 gross elements and the manas are effects only. Fine? So, repeating again, Purush is neither cause nor effect. Prakriti is only cause, it's not an effect. Mahat, Ahankar and 5 subtle essences, they are both cause as well as effects, while 5 sensory and 5 motor organs and the 5 gross elements along with manas, they are only effects and not causes. So, the whole creation unconsciously tends towards realization of the purpose of the Purush. That's where we started our lecture, that all these together are basically trying to serve the purpose of the Purush. So, this creation will continue till all the Purushas are liberated. So, the entire evolution of Prakriti, therefore, right from the first evolute, the Mahat, up to the last evolutes, the gross elements, is for the purpose of liberating each individual Purush. So, till the time these Purushas, all the Purushas are not liberated, this evolution will keep happening. Now, let us talk about liberation, or the idea of liberation according to Sāṅkhya. So, self, who is eternal, pure consciousness and all pervading, due to its ignorance, it identifies itself with manas or ahankar and mahat, which are the products of Prakriti. Thus, it experiences the worldly pains and pleasures. The universe is constituted of manifold objects, and since objects are embedded with gunas, the selves, and even interrelated among them, suffering is unavoidable. So, because of this mistaken identification of the Purush to the Prakriti leads to this bondage or the worldly pains and suffering that one goes through. So, this is so because Sāṅkhya claims that wherever there is guna, there is suffering. Further, they said that the life is heaven and is also controlled by the gunas. Since there are sufferings and bondage, there is also a path leads to liberation, emancipation or salvation. So, on Sāṅkhya account, there are 2 sorts of liberations, which are known as Jivan Mukti and Vidhe Mukti. The self attains freedom from worldly sufferings and realizes truth in one's life. Living in the earth is known as Jivan Mukti. So, while living in the earth, when you realizes the ultimate truth, that's known as Jivan Mukti. In the case of Vidhe Mukti, the self attains complete liberation from all sorts of suffering. This is achieved after the death only. Thus, Vidhe Mukti is known as Kevala. This is understood as liberation from the gross body. The Sāṅkhya theory of liberation is termed as Apavarg, the Purushats or the summum bonum of life. So with this we come to our lecture on Sāṅkhya philosophy. I hope it was useful. We will be continuing this series, and in our next lecture we will be discussing Yoga philosophy, which is in fact a practical application of Sāṅkhya philosophy. So that we will be discussing in our next lectures. So thank you viewers, and hope to see you in our next lecture.